human rights organizations have criticized a new anti-homosexuality bill that bans the identification as LGBTQI+. If President Yoweri Museveni signs it into law, it could see people in same-sex relationships getting lengthy jail terms. Joining us now is Roland Ebole, who is with East Africa, who is the East Africa Regional Researcher at Amnesty International. Thank you for making time for us, Roland. So you and other organizations have described this law as appalling. How worse will it make the lives of LGBTQI+ people in Uganda?
Thank you so much for having me. I think this law is very discriminatory and will encourage hate and violence. I say this because, one, it calls for life imprisonment and a death penalty for those who are found guilty of the offense of homosexuality. But again, the law itself also calls on hefty punishment for 10 years for those who are found to be promoting LGBTI, meaning that this is very vague in terms of what is promotion. Anybody that would be expressing themselves on social media, anybody that would be an organization that would be working on LGBTI rights may find themselves on the negative side of law and in conflict with the law. But again, it also calls on individuals to report any individuals that are found to be LGBTI, meaning that it also calls on the community, on the public to report members of the community. So we find that it will be very discriminatory and it will violate various rights of LGBTI people and the society at large.
Does it also embolden other countries with similar sentiments, but who don't necessarily have specific laws that are targeting this vulnerable group?
That is true because, remember, this is the third time that Uganda is trying to recriminalize homosexuality. You remember in 2013 there was an act, anti-homosexuality act, then again, which was declared unconstitutional by the court in 2014. Then again in 2019 there was a law, Sexual Offences Act, that President Museveni refused to sign into law in 2021 that also tried to put, penalties upon, homosexual conduct. Countries like Kenya, Zambia are already discussing passing their own similar law, which means that we are facing a situation where the region might be copying each other and going after LGBTI person through criminalization. So this is a very dangerous trend and may encourage other countries in the region.
Now, this bill seems to be vaguely worded and ambiguous. What gaps have you identified?
The gaps we're likely to find is, one, it's not corresponding with existing laws. And this is where, again, we are seeing a situation where it could be political and a situation where the drafters could have, inserted some sections that are very ambiguous and do not correspond with other existing laws, because after passing the law, the court might find it easy to really, strike it down. And these, provisions include provisions such as, the death sentence and life imprisonment, which basically don't go in tandem with the existing penal code, which is the law that initially prescribes penalties for conduct, which is called a natural conduct. So if this law goes into court and the court really upholds its independence, the court might actually strike it down for it going against existing laws in the country, unless they repeal the penal code, the sections around a natural conduct. Then it is very unlikely that this law will see the light of day if it goes to the court. So it is very ambiguous in that nature.
So you calling on President Museveni to urgently veto this legislation. What's the likelihood of that? I mean, his own personal views on homosexuality are quite clear.
Yes, it is very likely that he'll sign the law into act because there has been a lot of pressure to really pass this law. You'd remember that the law went through the motions of Parliament in a record less than 3 weeks from the draft being tabled in Parliament to public participation, to it being debated in a very rushed way. So the political pressure is there. what we are likely to see is that the law will be signed into law, and the stakeholders who are affected mostly might actually go to court to challenge it in court.
Yeah, and I mean, people who promote homosexuality will also be targeted. I imagine, that's going to institutionalize that discrimination and hatred. I saw that the White House warned that if Uganda continues with this, there will be possible economic repercussions if this new law comes into force. Is this the kind of pressure that can work?
Economic sanctions have worked in the past, although as Amnesty International we do not go after suggesting economic sanctions because conditionality, especially on aid and aid for development, affects the most poor in society and the most vulnerable in society. So we call on continued pressure to the executive, to the president, but we are hesitant to really say that we want conditionality, especially conditionality on aid. So unless we really understand, what these economic, sanctions really are, then we call on various other forms of pressure to really make sure that the law is not enacted or the law is repealed at a later stage if enacted.
All right. Roland Ebole, East Africa researcher at Amnesty International, thank you for making time.